All right, today's guest is Ra, known online as Ra of Earth, a performance and consciousness educator with a background in psychology and exercise science. Ra spent a decade owning multiple gyms in Los Angeles before evolving his work far beyond fitness into what he calls human capacity expansion, integrating nervous system regulation, breath, movement, and conscious awareness. Today, he mentors ambitious leaders who want their external success to actually match their internal potential. This conversation is about awareness, identity, reality, and what it actually means to take control of your life. So, Ra, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for the intro, Nate. Yeah, I'm super happy to be here.
Heck yeah, bro. Now I know you and we've known each other for a good amount of years. I know we used to go to the same events back in, man, what was that? 2018,
Venice.
2019,
Right.
Venice. Yeah, that's wild thinking back to how it seems like that wasn't too long ago, but it was in a way. I mean, you're talking over
Yeah.
6, 7 years ago,
It's
right?
getting close to a decade. Where are you living now?
I tell you, I'm up around Toronto here in Canada.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, my wife, she's from a town up here called Cambridge, Ontario. So I met her back in 2024 October, actually July, and then I moved up here in October. I'm just kind of been up here ever since. Not a citizen yet, working on that, but eventually the goal is to migrate back to the States.
Yeah, yeah. I grew up in Michigan, so that's pretty close. 5-hour drive to Toronto. Yeah, I was just in Toronto a year ago too. I've got really good friends there.
Yeah, Toronto, it's one of a kind. Michigan, which part did you grow up in?
By Detroit. So Waterford was where I spent most of my childhood. I ended up going to this university called Oakland University. And
Yeah.
then I was realizing that, like, wow, there's different places to live other than being in the wintertime. And I moved to California right after I got done with school and been here ever since. It's like 20 years so far, I think. Yeah, 2006 to 2026 is 20 years.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, California always has a sweet spot in my heart. I always eventually wanna have a place in California. I miss it just because of the connections, the accessibility out there. Obviously, the weather's beautiful. There's just so many great things about California that I mean, we could do a whole podcast, I feel like, alone on California,
Yeah, it's a
Michigan's.
trap in a way. Like, we can't leave. We keep on, like, trying to go look somewhere else to move, and we're just like, "There's nothing better than California," but it's so expensive, and so, yeah, we're just like, it seems to be better somewhere else to raise a family, but we end up just staying here.
What do you think about Arizona?
So, I like it, I like the lifestyle, I like the outdoors, I like the nature. It's just that dry, arid. I mean, that's what Arizona is coming from. It's like the zone of aridness. It's just that I'm half Filipino, which is like an island sort of, so I do really well in humid, but I don't like mosquitoes, but I do really well in humid, and Arizona is the opposite of that. My wife's the same way. Like, our nose will start bleeding if we go to Arizona for more than a few days. I'm sure you can get used to that though, but that's the issue with Arizona for us. We
Yeah,
checked it
'cause then
out. That was one of the places.
you'd be getting dehydrated without even knowing, just with how hot it is. You're not really sweating.
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy. Um, Ra, let me kinda get into, what if
Yeah.
reality isn't something that happens to you, right? But something that forms around you? What if the external results in your life, your business, your relationships, your income are just a printout of what's happening inside of yourself? And what if most people never touch that? Most people think they're in control of their life, right? But if you really look at it, they're just reacting to patterns that they've never even questioned. Um, so really, I want to start here with you. Do you think the average person is actually in control or just merely conditioned?
I think we're all conditioned, even those of us that practice that conditioning. If you think about sports, I have a sports background. I played hockey since I was 3 years old. So you practice things in order to actionably and tangibly utilize them within a game. And so we think about life as the game. We can condition ourselves and we can practice certain skill sets and how our emotions are expressed, how our psyche relates to reality. All of that can be practiced, which is what I do in my teachings. Is I've gamified and even turned our aspects of our psyche into skill sets which we can practice in a safe environment, so that when we're out in reality participating in the game, we're not just utilizing our emotions like anger for the first time, because we practice them in a safe, controlled environment, and we are aware of our conditioning, we're aware of our traumas and our triggers. And so even if we're practicing, we're still going to be expressing the conditioning of our practice. Now, one of your other questions is, are people aware of that? I think that to a degree, nobody's aware of the next level of depth of ourself. So even myself, there's my current conditioning, but there's still more that I can expand out into and be more aware of how I impact others and also how I relate to myself. So for everybody, there's always that next level of depth. And I think that just the sheer nature of how time expresses on this plane of reality, when you're younger, you have less awareness than you when you get older, and you can integrate more aspects of what you've learned and what you've practiced as life goes on. So that question's a little it's a direct question. Thank you for asking it. But applic the way it gets applied for all of us is a little bit more dynamic than just like, is it controlled, or are we controlled, or are we conditioned, or are we making decisions? It's not really yes or no. It's kind of like a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I love that answer, and I love how you mentioned about the game of life. One of my favorite books, The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Shin.
I
I
haven't
don't
read
know.
that.
Man, oh man, no, that's right up your alley. It's actually, they got a secret book list they say out there, and it's one of the books that's on that secret book list. It's one of the top ones, I believe, on that. And she really talks about one of the books in, like it's a book, but it's 4 books in the book. And
Yeah.
the first book is The Game of Life and How to Play It, and she talks a lot about, I feel like what you teach to, your clients and people that you work with so deeply and heavily with. Um, but yeah, I think life is very much, if you look at life as a game, you can have a lot of fun with it. And I feel that a lot of individuals in life, they look at life as some sort of an obstacle, or they make life a battle, I guess you can say, or a never-ending war, and not the most positive of vibrations. And if you gamify life to a very fun way. Like when we play games, it's fun. We feel like
Right.
a child, we feel like a kid. Our inner child comes out of us, and it doesn't matter what age you are. I've seen, I was at a Starbucks the other day getting work done, and I saw these 2 women beside me, and I'm on the computer, working away, and they got this game board out in front of them. I don't know what game it was, but man, I kid you not, they're probably in their 60s, 70s, and they're just having like a jolly good old time laughing, and and the dice like went on the floor, and this like 65-year-old woman, like she gets up real quick, like gets on. I'm thinking, man, I don't even see kids go down that quick to get the dice. Like they're so competitive. And but I was kind of listening in because I like to not be nosy, but I'm pretty aware of what's around me, and the way that they were talking with one another, like you could tell they were competitive, but that old age of wisdom that they had, they didn't have that competitiveness in a not so toxic way. Like there's a toxic way of being competitive versus not, where you can hold grudges and things. But I thought it was so interesting because you got someone of that age still playing games, and a lot of us, I notice, I feel like whenever we graduate high school or college, we just stop that altogether and we don't really release that inner child. So let me ask you this, you say about gamifying life. Give us some examples of how you gamify your life.
So when I said gamify, normally what we think about is like how apps gamify things, where everything's a competition. That's not necessarily what I meant. What I meant is imagine watching a sport on TV. You can watch a sport and sort of understand the rules and understand how skills dominate. And you can watch these players who they themselves practice all day, every day. But you, as a person, the spectator on the couch, you actually have almost just as much wisdom about like what it takes to win as the actual players who are practiced do. But the difference between the people that actually have the agency, which are the players, and the person who's just spectating and maybe just learning. So it's really easy for us to just learn and read a book and watch a podcast and watch Instagram reels and think that we've got a grasp on the game of life, but we don't. We need to practice it. And that's what I mean by gamifying. Like, we need to act more like that player and develop our capacity and our agency for the skill sets that they're expressing on the field of life. And I'm kind of mixing metaphors here. So if we're practicing and we basically need to take it into application so that when we go out into the field, we're not like a newbie in a sport. Because if you're a new person in a sport who doesn't know, even like, I want to be able to dribble the ball, but if we're not practicing, we can't do it, the sport is no fun. And we're going to get into that sort of just like pouting and not want to be here and leave and expressing things like anger and I'm not good enough and why me. We're going to fall into that if we don't have a practice applicable skill set. And so what I mean by gamify is like actually practicing our skills of our psychology, our emotions, even just how we move, the decisions that we make, so that when we're in the game of life, we have that power, that agency, that capacity, so that we understand the decisions that we make, the consequences, and how reality is kind of coming at us. And we win some, we lose some. It's okay because I'm a player and I can always have another try tomorrow type of deal. That's kind of what I mean by gamify. It's not normally how that word is used, but that's what I got right now.
I like that. But Ra, I come from a very rough upbringing.
Right?
I don't have, the financial meaning or I don't have, really well put together finances. I've always struggled with money over the years. I don't know what it's like to be in a positive environment. I can't afford the healthiest of foods. Like, I feel that this game of life is just coming to defeat me, and everything that I do goes against me. Like, I can't even go and practice religion or practice spirituality because I feel the universe or God has completely just turned its back against me, and everything's out to get me, Raw. So
Yeah.
how can I make my life so better if I've been through X, Y, and Z and all these bad things, tsunamis, tornadoes, hurricanes, you name it, that's hurt me.
I would say that you're exactly in alignment with the story that you're telling. And is there a way to tell a better story? Can we find the golden nuggets in that? What has these challenges developed in you? And can you start looking at those little wins and those little extra capacities as skill sets that we can be proud of? And we can use that to build courage to take steps into directions that you've limited yourself, right? Based on those words in that story that you're telling, can you take a step into new direction? And it's so easy to just say, oh, just do it. But we really need to build up, like I said, courage, capacity, awareness of our strengths and our skills, and also awareness of our weaknesses, and choose which direction we go based on that expanded awareness. And everything that you said, if you're, talking from your experience or just generally talking from other people's experience, everything that you said, I can guarantee is true. It's not an argument that people don't have tough times like that. It's just how are we relating to those tough times? Back to sports. Let me know if I'm losing. My dog just walked through all my wires.
Oh,
Back to
you're good.
sports. Practice is practice is tough. And so if you took the reverse of that, I've been given everything in my life. My parents told me I was, right and spoiled me. And when I went to school, my parents bought my teachers so I didn't have to try to get straight A's. And I didn't even have to learn to ride a bike because my parents just kept the training wheels on the entire time. Like that's the opposite story. And you have somebody who's absolutely not developed. And so also contrasting to the opposite spectrum and noticing that there's inefficiencies. And you could also tell your same story, like, oh, I never learned how to balance on my own. I never learned how to make decisions. Like you could also complain about the opposite side of the spectrum, being completely wealthy without any challenges and, not knowing if friends liked you or they just liked your money, not knowing if your girlfriends liked you or they just liked your money, not like all of these, not having to try, not having any gratification of winning because you were going to win no matter what. That's also not a good story. So, and you can complain and bitch about that as well. So it's really just about choosing where your focus is, right? Energy goes, energy flows where focus goes, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're, let's say you're struggling with finances or you can't find the right partner, I always say you gotta attract. I mean, you are what you attract. So if you're attracting negativity, or if you're attracting just the same old thing over and over again, month after month, man, you gotta do a pattern interrupt within your psyche to absolutely just reverse the same old thing that you're going through. And a lot of us, we live the same story that we write our own story, but we keep writing the story that we've been raised upon, which bless our parents' heart, bless our grandparents' heart with whoever, raised you. And they taught us with what they were taught. So you can't always help with how you were raised, but you can help, especially if you're at that given age, what you feed your mind, what you feed into your consciousness, and exactly, what you're putting into your body, right? Your body is your temple. If we're talking about foods, if you put shit foods into your body, well, you're going to feel like shit. If you feel absolutely incredible based upon putting nourishing foods in your body, well, it makes sense because you're putting nourishing foods inside your body. So I think it really comes down to that.
Can
Let
I
me
say
ask.
something else?
Yeah, yeah.
So I do a practice every week and self expansion app, and it works with different layers of what I'm talking about. And it's sometimes we're working on strengths, sometimes we're working on traumas. Next week, or this Wednesday, actually, in 2 days, I'm filming one. It's on emotional transmutation. And so when we look at our emotions, so what I'll be teaching is like if we have anger, like if we have an anger issue, or we've got these emotions that come to the surface, all of us do, that are more like on our shadow side of things. And it might be guilt, it might be shame, it might be anger, it might be sadness, grief. All of those emotions show you something about yourself. So the goal isn't to try and erase things. It's to gather the gold that's in there. If you're expressing anger, that's usually a signal to you of where your boundary is, right? So if you look at what you're angry at, you can see, this is just an example, that possibly there's something happening that you would prefer not to happen. And that brings up anger. And so that's a signal that you can now utilize. Maybe you need to now go have a conversation with somebody else to, in this cliche, to set a boundary, but that's essentially what you're doing in simple terms. And then you can organize your life where you can look at things like anger as signals and things like shame as signals. And these lower level emotions are all signals to let you know which direction to move. And it's the same thing with life circumstances. If you keep on getting broken up or you keep on ending up in the same uh, traumatic relationship, toxic relationship, that's a signal. There's a signal that there's something within you that you are craving within these experiences. And what is that? And there's a way for us to dig deep and realize that, like, oh, it's because my mom or dad was this way to me that is causing me to either crave or be attracted to this certain scenario. So I go into it unaware of why I'm going into it, and then I fall over the same trap over and over and over again. And the awareness allows us, at least next time, if we're going into it, to be aware of why we're going into it and to be okay if things end up the same way. And then eventually, with the awareness of the addiction, we can start to wean ourselves off of it and make different decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think that's so true with what you just mentioned. You said, Ra, let's talk about meditation a little bit, right? You started meditating at 19, right?
Yep. Yeah.
19 years old, okay. And said that, you developed this capacity further. What specifically changed in how you experienced the world when you first started to meditate? I feel like meditation right now is very trendy. It's popular. But when you were 19 years old, what made you want to start meditating? And what are some practices that the viewers and listeners can do now to meditate, to get more clear and even focused in their life?
Meditation is broad, it's a vast practice. It's just like movement or just like learning. Right? Meditation is essentially as vast as that. So you can meditate with breath work. You can meditate by just closing your eyes and sitting cross-legged. You can meditate by laying down. You can meditate with binaural beats. You can meditate with chanting. And how I started meditating was a pretty wild practice. I used to use colors. It's called color entrainment technique.
Hmm.
I would use colors and I would focus on colors like red, orange, and then I would go yellow, green, blue, violet, black. I would focus on it in my mind's eye for about 30 seconds to a minute, each of those colors. And then I would get into black and sort of, I would be lucid by this time. And I'm fast forwarding through this actual meditation. I would walk into basically like a lucid dreaming environment. And the purpose of this meditation is to get your frequency down to the frequency of the earth. And then when you step through a doorway, after you meditate down into blackness, you step through a doorway, and now you're essentially in this non physical realm, still connected to earth and everybody within it. And you can manipulate things. And you learn really, really fast that having good intentions in this realm is the best, because if you intend on harming or getting ahead or having unfair advantage of other people in this state, then it's essentially you doing that to yourself. Because at
Mm.
that level, we're all connected. And that's how we can have steering wheel control of reality, because we are reality. We're not just this thing that's here and everything around us is separate than us. Like, we are connected to all of this. So through meditation, you can actually expand yourself, your concept of self, out into reality. And then your power of intention becomes stronger because you have identified with everything around you. And then you can start running experiments and seeing that what you were intending on is being reflected back to you in reality. Now, your second question was what can people do? What kind of practices they can do? That's all going to depend on the person of what type of meditation they start with. For me, I would usually ask people questions of what type of meditation do you know about? What type of meditation has come into your field? because usually things hit you a couple times before you say yes, before you get that permission slip that it's okay. And so
Yeah.
if transcendental meditation has come around to the person, and it's like, let's try that. Or if breath work is, like curious to the person, I want to know what feels like they're getting pulled on. And then we go in that direction. And that's what I would invite people to do is look back into their history, into their past, and what has come around a few times already. And that would be the direction that I would go in.
Okay. Do you think everybody should meditate daily? And if so, like how long should they meditate for?
So I had the benefit when I moved to California, I was a personal trainer. I'm still a coach, but back then I was mostly fitness oriented, but still also like life coaching is in there when you're a personal trainer spending three hours a week with somebody every single week. And my clients back then were like very successful. And so I was
Yeah.
lucky to be basically in conversation with people as a mentor, like I'm a mentorship figure and they're also a mentor to me, because they're 50 years older than I was.
Right.
And one of my guys back then told me that meditation's just happening 100% of the time. It just depends on if you're open to it being meditation or not. And he told me like, you could be washing dishes and meditating. And at the time, I didn't know what he was talking about. And this guy was 70 years old, very wise. And he told me a lot of things that I didn't really understand until 10, 20 years later. And that was one of them that meditation doesn't have to be an event. It can be existing when you're exercising, is what he told me, because I was into fitness. And definitely, I mean, look at marathon runners. That's a meditation. If you talk to anyone who gets up at 5 in the morning and goes to the gym before work, they're doing that to meditate. They're going to get into the zone to clear the distractions, to increase and deepen their breathing so that they get to the point of release and presence. Like when you're lifting, when whatever type of exercise, you're in presence. And that present flow state is the closest thing to these deeper levels of meditation that you hear of, like samadhi, right? Like you're in absolute flow, absolute presence. And we can find that even if we're not sitting with our, in lotus position with our eyes closed. And so the question that you asked was, do you think everyone should meditate? I think everybody is meditating. What matters is the level of awareness. When you're scrolling on your phone, you're meditating. When you're
Mm.
watching somebody else's life that's fictional play out on Netflix, you're meditated. You're in that matrix. And so the question isn't yes or no in meditation, it's how, and how aware and intentional are you within your meditative practice. And then eventually you realize that life is the meditation.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I totally can see it from that lens now. I never thought of it that way. I mean, everything really is a meditation when you look at it, and I feel most of society is meditating in not the best way. They're meditating from a negative vibration and especially a comparison vibration. You look at how social media is set up, the algorithms, and I feel as if we were put on this incredible earth for a reason, and as human beings, we can all produce, but it's a shame. And I feel that a lot of us consume more than what we produce. And if we would actually produce more in this world and actually unlocked and activated our gifts that are rooted within us, because we each have different gifts. Ra has his gift that he's great at. Nate has his gift that he's great at. Um, I just feel as if we are operating out of what the system has accustomed or has regulated within ourselves with what we learned growing up, to where we're not truly activating what our true desire, our truest desires, and what our consciousness is actually gravitating towards. I notice that we gravitate towards what we would be great at and what we want to do, but we don't actually do the thing that we want to do. And I feel as if we live in a delusion which spirals us downward instead of upward. If you spiraled upward and actually lived out your utmost, fullest desires to be who you want to be, maybe you might just be living the life that you want to live, but you keep being in that downward spiral of a pattern, and you wonder why, like, raw, I'm not in the life that I truly want to live in. Does that make sense?
It's totally, you're accurate. And that's how my understanding is as well. And the words that you're almost sort of like struggling to put words to it, because there's a whole bunch of things that are happening that we aren't really aware of. Like you said, we're aspiring to be something, but we're not actually acting on it. And when you actually get clear with that, you realize that the thing that you're aspiring to be isn't even really in alignment with who you are now. Usually it's the thing that you thought you wanted 10 years ago, but never went for. And it's still, you're just still dangling it behind you and being like, well, I still want this thing. And when you actually start taking steps and you're like, actually, I don't want that anymore. Like, it's what I used to want. And it's old, outdated identity pattern that we're trapped in. And because we're trapped in it, we're not open to what is actually going to serve us now. And also you reflecting that service and being the greatest expression of yourself outward into reality. So it's this sort of like weird vortex that we're in where we're not even aware of what we desire, and we think we want one thing, but it's really not what we want. But because we're not getting it, it just continues to cycle and loop. And then there's this frustration that builds up within us that we're not really in alignment and at our capacity. And I think even those of us that are consistently progressing through this, that's still a thing that's always there. It's like this linear time that we're in right now. We constantly keep on getting to check in the present moment because it's so easy to fall into the past, which is like you brought up comparison and I'm not where this person is. And so then we've got these little side battles pulling on our attention. I just call that distractions. It's like, where are you now in this breath, in this moment? And what's the decision that's here with you now? And what's the best decision for you now? And can you do what it takes to step into it? Because most of the time, we're not going to know what we need to do or how it's going to look. There's not going to be a guarantee that it's going to work out. And it's on that razor's edge of like light and darkness and fear and happiness and success and failure that that life is. Like when we think back to when we were 19, you and I are a little bit older, when we think back to like early 20s, like just finishing high school or college where we didn't know anything and we would just wake up and do like what felt good. Like those are the good old days that like when you get middle age, that's what you like think back when life was amazing. That's because nothing was secure. You were in the moment more. And how can we do that now? Even if we have kids, like how can we sprinkle in that into our life? And I think we all have things that light us up. Like for me, adventure is something that is that for me. It takes me there. Right. And for another person, it's creativity. And right. So like for me, I go on walks in places I haven't walked before. It's like my wife we were just at a hot springs resort a couple of days ago and she went and got a massage. So I took the baby and I literally just walked up a mountain and that hour like fills me up for like a whole week. Like it gives me that sense of like what I'm talking about, presence, identity. And for another person, it's picking up a paintbrush and an easel and putting their self on the canvas. And we don't have to do it all day long, but we need to make sure that we're filling ourselves up with our passions and what gives us purpose and pleasure a few times a week at least. And then it makes all of the undesirable stuff that we do, the logical stuff that we do, tolerable and worth it.
100%. And for those of you who don't don't follow Raw, he posts some incredible stories, content, him and his wife. You can find him Raw of Earth on Instagram. And also, Raw and I, we have something in common. We both just became, dads really for the first time. And Raw has a 6-month-year-old daughter. I have a 10-month-year-old son. Raw, let me ask you this. When you first had your daughter and throughout these 6 months, did you lose that old identity that you had versus what you have now? Did you have parts that that you lost altogether that you didn't think would happen? I mean, did have you transformed at all as a man throughout these 6 months?
It's a complete transformation, and it's not easy. The baby sort of forces it out of you, and
Yeah.
also reveals responsibilities that I didn't know that I had. So the verbiage you use about lost, I'm not sure I lost it in a sense that I don't know where it is and I can't find it, but it's more of an evolution. The way that we sort of evolve as a first grader into a high school student, like that first grader served a purpose. And by the time you go into high school, it's no longer needed and then you can't go back. Like you're no longer able to be a first grader when you're going into high school. And so from going from not having a child to having a child, there's definitely this distance, like major distance that I feel from who I was a year ago to who I am now. And it's like a bittersweet feeling of like that person doesn't exist anymore and it will never ever exist. There's no going back to that. And this new identity I'm stepping into and learning how to cherish without being so attached to the identity that I graduated from. But it's definitely, I guess, lost. Lost is an accurate way to describe it, and I'm attempting to transmutate it into another description. But it's definitely a lost piece of myself. That 6 months have gone by so far. I feel like the first couple months, it was it was like I'm in the darkness. I don't know who I am. All I know is that today I'm taking care of this baby.
Yeah.
We had a rough go too. The baby came. Our water broke 8 months, 8 weeks early, and then baby was born 2 weeks after that, and we were in the NICU in the hospital for 6 weeks every single day. My wife basically stayed every minute there, and I was full time chef. So like work stopped, everything stopped. I'm just like going back and forth from the hospital, bringing her food because she didn't eat any like hospital food, and it was a rough start for us, and that was really jarring, and I feel like I felt like what you're describing a lot then, but once we got out of the hospital and got home and and got onto a regular schedule, all the overwhelming love that I have for the baby is just triumphant above everything. And it really feels like this old person I was just a shadow of who I really am meant to be as a father. Like the father feels like the ultimate expression of self, way more than anything I've ever achieved in my life. Fatherhood is is the greatest. It's the biggest responsibility and it's the greatest expression of self. And I recommend it to everybody. Like every man I talk to now, I'm like sort of like sprinkling in like, yo, you should think about this. Like you don't need to wait. Like like this is where you're heading and there's no reason to delay it.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think it's an experience, and I think having a child is your own personal development journey. You'll get so many different things brought out within you that you thought you had figured out, and you thought like, oh man, my patience is good. I'm totally great at patience or just showing up, and then boom, it just gets wiped out all from under you. I'll tell you, that's been a challenge for me, has definitely been the work-life balance. My wife, she owns a salon, so she'll go some days to the salon to work, but ever since we had our our child back in June, she took off a few months for mat leave, and when she went back, she started taking clients from home. So having that work-life balance has been probably the biggest struggle for me, just because before our baby was born, I was so used to being able to work a lot more. And I also have a 9-year-old stepdaughter as well. We get her 2 weeks out of the month, and it's been a struggle for me with having that work-life balance, and I think also as well, it doesn't matter how long you've known somebody, especially your significant other, your partner, your husband or wife. When you have a child, you will see different sides of each other that you have never seen before. And whether that is you'll see positive sides, and then sometimes you'll see negative sides. There has been sides that have coming out of me where I thought I was a very patient individual, and I am, but I realize to an extent I have things that test my buttons whenever I get overstimulated, and a child will absolutely do that to you. And I'm not saying this to scare anybody, but this is where I say when you have a child and you're with somebody that you've been with for many years, you will get tested. You will get tested more than anything else in this world. I tell you, for the first 2 weeks raw, I cried every single day when my son was born, and I wasn't constantly crying, but I'd have, like, moments throughout my day where where I'd see him and I'm thinking, "Man," I just started tearing up, and my wife's like, "What's wrong?" I said, "Man, I just never felt this way before, baby." Like, I just never had this feeling of this life and knowing that this is mine. This is my life that I helped create with you. Of course, the women, they did most of the
Right.
journey throughout that, right? They'll let you know
So
that.
powerful.
Yeah. But I just looked at how incredible it is, and I kid you not, man, yesterday he said for the first time, like, "Dada, dada," and I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh," like, I never thought words could penetrate my whole entire existence than what those words did. Of course, mama was his first words,
Right.
and it's just incredible witnessing that. So, I guess I'm saying all this raw to say, did you notice any types of the things that I've noticed within your wife where maybe you're like, "Whoa, whoa, I never had this maybe challenge come up. Now that we had a kid, patience has gotten tested a lot more." Have you had any of those types of obstacles kinda show
Of
up and
course. Of
yeah?
course. Yeah. And for me, you're mentioning patience. For me, I think because I got picked on a lot in school, and also my dad was a little bit rough on me. I have this thing about like the way that people talk to me, and that's why I went into hockey and I just got into fights every single weekend. Because it gratified me to like be able to beat somebody up if they disrespect me, and so I have this this thing that I get triggered by of like if somebody talks to me a certain way, and like my wife barely sleeps at night, and
Yeah.
she's also getting all the nutrients extracted from her because she's breastfeeding, and even like 9 months of or before that of her like building the baby within her body, and uh still being able to like if it, she's a little rough sometimes under those conditions, that's my challenge, is like being compassionate and nurturing and loving within the chaos that she's going through, and knowing that there's no way that I even know what that stress is like for her. And I literally, like, at nighttime, she's waking up all night long, like changing the diaper, breastfeeding the baby's crying. And I do what I can, but it's like 5% of the work that she's doing with the baby. And I feel like I'm at capacity. So I don't even know what she's going through. And I have so much respect for her. She's such a powerhouse and a superwoman. But yeah, the challenges come where I'm like having to face aspects of myself that I normally don't like to go, and being able to dissolve those for the sake of our family. And, a lot of people get divorces and things like that at this stage, right? Like, and I understand why. Like, you're both sleep deprived, you're both financially deprived. Like you said, like, work life has suffered for us both. And so they're like, things aren't as comfortable and easy as they were. And then you're trying to manage the relationship and each other and the new child. And it's all like, what it's given me is a tremendous respect for parents that I didn't have before becoming one. My own parents included,
Yeah.
who had me in their 20s. I'm 43 with all of my, life experience going through this, and consciousness, and I'm aware of things that I know that I wouldn't have been if I was 24 years old going through this. And so having compassion for my parents, and also, like I said earlier, parenting is the greatest job in the world. And I don't feel like parents have enough respect for what they do. And I also feel like parents don't respect themselves for what they do, especially people like divorced parents, people that feel like maybe they failed a relationship, um, 10 years ago, who they had kids. Like, you still brought life into this world, and you stimulated a life into this planet, and you made that happen, and however long you're able to stick it out is like, a lot of people, and going on a complete side tangent right now, but I just want to say, because this is something that needs to be resolved in a lot of people that have broken marriages with kids, and judge themselves on that and have shame around that. That's so much better than if you would have not had kids and just went and not gotten married, and just like went from girlfriend or boyfriend to girlfriend or boyfriend, like, just like meaningless, essentially, relationships where you didn't really produce anything. Producing a life is the most important thing ever. And if you did that in a previous relationship, then that's amazing. That's now a life on this planet because of you. And it doesn't matter if the marriage survived that or not. You still did better than if you would have just not went that far with that level of commitment. And so I think about the compassion I have for parents all over, like in all different spectrums of how it ended up working out, and just how amazing we all are. And we're all a result of our parents. And it's just, yeah, it's for me, I'm just like overwhelmed with that sort of like awness of like, wow, everyone goes through this to produce a child. And it's such a dramatic, amazing experience, and all of our parents did this for us, which is amazing.
They did. Yeah, because you look back at how we were raised. I mean, everybody was raised differently, but you look at your mom, your dad, or whoever raised you, and when you become a parent, you start to recognize some of those same mechanisms. When you were little, you're thinking, "Oh, man, this is why dad acted this way, or this is why mom was a little bit extra in this arena." And it starts to come full correlation and make sense, when you become a parent. And I think, whether you have a kid in a relationship, whether you're married and you have a kid, I think whenever you do have that life that you guys produce, that is the most important thing, Raw, to what you said. You are responsible for that life that you create with the woman or man that they become. You know, Ra is responsible for his 6-month-year-old daughter with the life that she obviously, turns it into and becomes. Same with me with my 10-month-year-old. And I always hear all the time, well, make sure you cherish these moments early on because they go within a blink of an eye. And it's true. I mean, my wife, we were cleaning out the closet last night for some spring cleaning, and she found some of the baby
Clothes.
clothes. Yeah, those baby clothes, and started to get a little bit emotional. It was like, "Can we have another one?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, in due time. We're gonna have another one in due time. We gotta get a little bit further here first before I can feel comfortable yet. I'd like to, like, I'd love to gift you another one and we both can have that second child, but for me personally, I'm not ready yet, um, and intuitively, to say the least. But it's a beautiful thing whenever you do have a child. But to also what you said, Raw, we do not know what it's like as men to be a woman, to go through pregnancy, to be that sleep deprived, to be on your last doggone nerve every single day. And I am like you. In those moments, it can be very hard to show our significant other compassion whenever they just feel completely taxed, and they might, like, they might chew you out for whatever reason. They might say something because you did something now that before it never mattered, right? But
Right.
now it's like, no, this does not stand. And you recognize these patterns now that didn't necessarily matter before. But at the end of the day, I think that's where what grace comes into play, and you have to take yourself out of that heightened emotional moment and take yourself out of your own body and then look at yourself and say, okay, this is why X, Y, and Z got said. This is why something might have been triggered. Everything's okay. Everything's in that safe zone. We are going through this journey together as a husband and a wife to raise our daughter, to raise our son, to become the best human being as possible. We're giving them the highest nutrients that they possibly can have, and straight from the tit, straight from the tit it's coming. We're not giving them this
Right.
seed oil formula
Yeah.
to to calcify their pineal gland, or we're giving them the utmost highest nutrients, and we're raising them because we are high vibrational parents. But it's hard to always think like that in the moment. So I always respect and love watching what you guys post on social media, because I know that you guys would post a lot more, especially wifey. I know she would post so much more, but she's up
Yeah.
24/7, you know?
Right. I mean, she was doing recipes and cooking and all this stuff, and every day, that's the thing that comes out of her mouth. That's what I hear her talk about is like, I can't post on, I'm not posting on, I'm not able to share on social media. I'm
Yeah,
like, yeah, you're being a mother. Like, it's okay. But her logic, my logical response to her, I don't even know what to describe it. It's different than how I look at things is, you know, it doesn't satisfy her.
I get it. I think being an entrepreneur and a business owner, it's hard because we wanna always be producing, and we always like, I'm not gonna lie, I that's my biggest challenge right now is just I do miss the life that I had before having a child. As incredible as what it is, having your own child, that is beautiful. But I miss having the time that I would have beforehand, because I was able to get more done. I was able to produce more. But is that the meaning of life?
Right.
No.
Exactly. Exactly.
No. To what she said, it's not. The meaning of life is to produce another life and to raise that life up. So then it's like you got to slap yourself in the face and say, Nate, rah, it's fine. Like, just, you're good. You were doing the right thing. You were raising a life. This is the meaning of life, So yeah, it's crazy. You and I think we're very similar in that way. I wasn't trying to go off on a tangent here with, raising kids or anything. That wasn't in the books for today. But um, real quick before we pivot, are you a believer in co-sleeping?
Yeah. Yeah. we're a believer in how things should naturally be. And so we're trying to limit the toys. Co-sleeping's definitely like that's not even that wasn't even a hard decision. Like, do we put the baby in another room or do we do we sleep with the baby? Well, what makes sense? If we look at animals, what do they do? You know, like even a crib next to the bed didn't make sense to us. What feels natural? And I think we did the very first night put something attached to the bed and immediately, like, didn't do that. Like, I don't even think that lasted one night, and it's just yeah. So, I think it was just we're trying this out because that's what everyone makes you feel like a bad parent for co-sleeping. It's a weird thing. Everyone makes you feel like a bad parent for anything, I'm sure. But the co-sleeping thing is like religion for some people, that you're gonna kill your baby and you're irresponsible because the baby I don't know. It's a weird thing.
It is, yeah, and then you have all the doctors that say, "Yeah, you shouldn't be co-sleeping," and then they'll, slap you a new one, giving you all these regulations, and I never thought it was that big of a deal. I mean, I guess it is, a pretty big deal where a lot of men, they have such a hard time with that, and then they'll give their wife absolute backlash, and I think because once again, they're used to how things were, sleeping with their wife, just the 2 of them. Now you have a baby that comes into the equation, and the wife or the woman per se wants that baby in the same bed. And us men will get very like, "Oh, like, man, I mean, how much longer are they gonna be in this bed for? Like, I can't sleep the same," and and everything. And I at first, I think it bothered me a little bit, but then it got to the point to where I understood where she was coming from. We got a queen size mattress. What kind of mattress do you guys got?
We have a Cal King, which is still it's bigger than a queen, but it doesn't feel big enough.
Especially when you're co-sleeping. I get it, having a queen size mattress for us. I told her, I was like, I said, "Babe," 'cause I got Lyme disease. I found that out in September, and having Lyme, my sleeps are already all over the place, and when I wake up every single morning, I feel like I just feel like I've gotten hit by a train, and I told her, I said, "I'm totally fine with the co-sleeping, and I'm just at a point now to where I have a sliver of the bed, and I feel like I'm rolling off the
Yeah.
bed being on the
Like
queen,
sleeping on the edge.
literally sleeping on the edge, 'cause the little one, he has one portion, she has another most of the portion, and then you just kinda like camping. You camping over there.
Right.
So I got a pull-out bed, and I said, "How about we bring this into our bedroom,
Yeah.
and I'll sleep on the pull-out bed." And it does not bother me at all. Again, some people would probably be like, "Oh, Nate, how can you not sleep with your wife? How can you?" And I'd be like, "Listen, with all due respect, that's what you think, but I'm a very independent sleeper. So I do not mind sleeping in the same room. I'm just literally feet away from my wife and my child." So I've been doing that for the past probably 3 months. And it's been a game changer with my sleeps because again, she'll still be up throughout the night with our baby. He's got a bit of a bug right now that he's dealing with, so hasn't been feeling the best. So she knows that that helps me out though, and I'm not going to be as like grumpy or irritable because I am actually getting extra sleep. If she does need help, she'll be like, "Nate, Nate, like I need you." I'll be like, "Okay, I'll get up." But that's what's worked for us, and I feel like when it comes to parenting, there is no perfect formula.
Right.
What works for you and your wife might not work for me and my wife, or it might work for my wife and I. So I think that's something else parents need to really stop being so hard on themselves and just do what works for you. If I gotta sleep on a pull-out mattress for 3 or 4 months, so be it, that's fine. My ego's not gonna be hurt by that. I'd love to sleep with my wife, absolutely. But Do I crave better sleep than just sleep with my wife? 100%. I'll say that all day, every day. So I was curious on your thoughts about that. One last thing before we pivot here. I know you had a daughter. I had a son. What are your thoughts on circumcision?
Same thing. Back to natural. Like if I had a son, there would be no way that we circumcised them. Like none. Like no way. There's just like no reason for genital mutilation. And that is the most sensitive part, you know? And so if we look back to why circumcision was, you know, like who brought it into the mainstream in America, you go back to like Dr. Kellogg and how he wanted to stop people from stop boys from masturbating, and this was going to reduce their sexual pleasure. And the thought was that this is going to stop the boys from masturbating. And it's just like, it's it's not natural, and there's no benefit. And then you've got like a whole bunch of meridians and energetic things that we don't necessarily believe in the United States that are also getting chopped off and can cause psychological issues. Like I'm circumcised. My parents circumcised me. It wasn't really my choice. And I now, as an adult, wish that I wasn't, you know, and I don't know how it would have affected me, like in the hockey locker rooms, if I had um, what do we used to call them? Uh, the things that pick ants, like a ant, I don't know. There's a couple guys on our team that weren't circumcised, and nobody really got made fun of. And I think that was the worry back then, is like we need to circumcise the boys so that they don't get made fun of. But yeah, it
Yeah.
would be amazing if I wasn't circumcised. Like I don't know what even sex would be like. Like it'd probably be way better and everything, you know, like so that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I was curious about that. I too am circumcised. Again, it's not our choice. It's our parents' choice, which a lot of times I feel like the doctors are deciding on behalf of our parents, which is why they did it, how they did it to us. But I was pretty much for it in the beginning. I had a hard time whenever my wife was like, "Nope, we're not doing it." I'm like, "Why?" And I was just pretty ignorant about it. I didn't understand the purpose because I go off of what I've known my whole life. And then whenever I started looking into it, I'm glad that she said, "No, we're not doing it. Like, I'm not gonna put him through that pain." And when I started researching it to the things that you said, to put that much pain, especially in that sensitive of a region, and how that can really mess up yourself for the rest of your lives. It's insane how that can happen. So, yeah, I was curious your thoughts on that, Raw. That's interesting because I every single boy that I have, I'm not gonna do it. But again, whenever I told my dad that, my parents that, they're like, "Oh, no, 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 you should definitely circumcise them." Like, it says it in the Bible and everything, you know?
There's no
So,
reason. Like there's no reason, there's no good reason that anyone could come up with of why you would put somebody through that traumatic experience. It's so traumatic. Like would you do that would you cut more off of yours right now? Like there's no way we would do that. And so why would it be okay to cut it off when you're a child, a
yeah.
baby even?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, we're getting it, hitting over an hour here. Do you still got like 10, 15
Yeah.
minutes? I was gonna do
Yeah, I'm
one more
good.
topic. Okay. Um, so let's do a complete pivot right now. We're gonna get into some deep stuff. So, Ra, you did a deep research project on 9/11, right? Back around 2003. You wanna hit on
For
this?
some reason, I wasn't I wasn't expecting this, but yeah, no, let's do it. I when you said let's do a complete pivot, I was like, what way are we going? And then we come here. Okay, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, we're doing a full 180, okay? So you did a deep research project on 9/11 around 2003. So that you say blew the lid off the story. You were taught about how the world works. Now, what did you find and how did that change you when you researched about 9/11?
I was in college and I have a degree in psychology, so it was like we had to do presentations and 10-page papers every single class. And there was one class that we had to do a presentation, and it was like an empiric we had to look at many different studies on two opposing arguments. So we had to pick anything that was like opposing arguments, and we had to find evidence of each of the arguments and then compare both the sides. And I didn't really know much about 9/11, but because I was already like meditating at this time and looking into different aspects of life. And by this time, I wasn't even buying textbooks in college. I was studying my own and reading my own books. I decided that was more valuable to me than spending $300 on a textbook. And so I heard there was like differing philosophies of this 9/11 thing. And it was only like 2 years after, maybe 3 years after 9/11 happened. And so I
Wow.
didn't really have any like pre-existing opinion on it, but I knew that there was differing opinions. So I went and I researched, and this was back when, everything we had to print. So I remember there was like a stack of paper that I printed out, like this big of evidence, and I also had video evidence as well that said that 9/11 happened differently than the media story. And then what I could find of evidence validating the media story was just the media story itself. It was 2 pages of why the buildings pancake flattened down, straight down at basically the speed of gravity. So it was like huge thing versus little thing. And then I went to the class and I presented this, and the teacher yelled at me. The students yelled at me. I remember after I gave the presentation, people were very upset. I sat down. The girl in front of me just turned around and started yelling at me because her brother is in the military and, like, in
Yeah.
Afghanistan or wherever they were at that point. And for me, it was like very clear of what I could see in video, what I could see with the experts. Like, we're talking about engineers and experts, and I'm watching video of like molten steel being pulled out of the ground like 10 months after the towers were collapsed. And it's still like molten steel. Like that's what it wasn't dynamite. It was like a specific type of explosive that would stay hot for that long. That's how it would melt the steel. And thermite, I want to say it was called. I don't know. It's been a couple decades since that, but it was like unquestionable to me of there's something else happening. And even since then, documentaries have come out. You kind of see some backgrounds of who owned the buildings and like the insurance stuff and all of that was like I knew about. I knew that there was like students doing projects on certain floors that were also parts of other countries. They're kind of like maybe double agents. They redid the entire internet in the entire building. So for months beforehand, everyone who worked there said that there was dust everywhere because they were rewiring internet in the
Mm.
buildings, but basically drilling holes and probably lining explosive wires. Anyways, all of this stuff just made me realize the media is a complete manipulation machine. TV is like that. I already at this time wasn't watching TV, I was reading books. So I already knew the television was programming. But then I started just realizing that basically everything we were taught in school, and by everything, I mean like literally everything. And I spent probably the next 15 years re-educating myself. So I realized that I need a complete re-education of just how everything works, how matter works, how time works, how math works, how geometry works, how relationships work, how authority works, what the purpose of a government is, what it's always been. It's just controlling the minds of the people. And, the stories that we were told about slavery and the revolutions and all the wars and why they happened, like what money is, all of this stuff, just I needed to re-educate myself. And so luckily I own my businesses. Like I moved to California, and through meditation, I realized that I can manipulate reality. So I was like, well, if this is true, I can move to California and open up a gym. And I was able to do that. And so I did that. And because I own my own business, I had a lot of time to research. And really that 9/11 thing was the start of my like, whoa, everything's different than what I have been taught. And there was things that happened before that. Like I started realizing that I could manipulate reality as a young kid. When I would think to do something bad would happen to me. So then I would just do experiments on that and realize like, well, if I think good things, then good things will happen.
Yeah.
So there was things that were already there, but the 9/11 thing blew the lid off, like especially the government and the media's role in our life and just the connections. I was talking to my friend who's throwing an event down in Anaheim, and he was like, dude, he's like, because he was talking to me about getting advertising, like, who do I know that can help them promote? And he's like, I was looking into radio shows to do advertising on the radio shows. He's like, dude, the same companies own like every single radio station is owned by the same people. He's like, it's like we think we're getting different perspectives, but they're all owned by the same organization that's just feeding us the programming of the influence that they choose the population to go.
Yeah, that's wild. Like, because with the 9/11 and like planes cannot hit that tower, and that tower drop the way that it did. Like, you would still have some of the tower left. Like
Yeah,
the whole tower doesn't just
it
drop down.
disintegrated. It
Yeah,
literally just went into dust.
right. And that's what I think people, and it's a sensitive topic because bless their heart, people lost families, and for you to think the other way, that it could have happened another way, which is what, because I believe the same thing you do, you're looked down upon heavily. But what if it did? And
It
all
blows
there's
my
all
mind that people don't,
yeah.
but also it blows their mind that we think our way. So I get it.
Right, but
The
they're the
same
same
thing.
people that think having seed oils is fine, right? And like it's the same exact type. I know David Icke. Uh, I'm sure you've heard of him, David Icke.
Yeah.
He's gotten taken down a lot on social media because I got probably 2, 3 of his books. I think 2 of them called The Trigger, which was about 9/11, and the other one called The Answer, which is about the pandemic, as well as other events throughout history that have happened. And it's just interesting how a lot of these things, we're told a story through history, but a lot of times is it really factual? And I talked to Troy Casey about this last week, about that topic. And you look at even the Titanic. Do you think the Titanic hit an iceberg and sunk that way, Raw?
Well, there's a lot of proof that it wasn't even the Titanic, that it was a
Wow.
different ship. When like the pictures show that it was not even the original Titanic. And yeah, it's like that was the start of the war, right? That was,
Yeah.
or wait, no, that's I'm thinking of a different ship. But that was the bankers were on the ship, right? That was
Right,
like the
right.
reason. The ones that were opposing the central bank were on that ship, and it makes sense just to get rid of them, and then you can basically have a monopoly on the currency, which is now ruling the entire world. The ship was designed to hit an iceberg too. Like it was designed to withstand leakage. The 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 media thing is nuts because when you like, we just went through COVID, right? And
Yeah.
for those of us who were aware, I knew that was going to come. Like, I absolutely knew that they were going to have adult mandated vaccines coming for 5 to 8 years before COVID. And so when COVID came, I was like, oh, this is how they're going to do it. I didn't know how they were going to make adults get vaccines, but I knew that they were going to. So when I watched it happening, I was like, I didn't have to look or consider. Like, it was just like an absolute no for me. Um, I didn't care how deadly it was going to be, but it was it was a joke. And like, yeah, people can say that they had family members that died. People die from things. And so when you look at like the flu and even if they did die from COVID, that's okay. Like COVID was manufactured to do that. It was manufactured to kill people and then make everybody else get, you know, the leftover people get vaccines. And luckily, not everybody did. And the campaign that they did try so tremendously hard, it was like laughable. Like get a free slice of pizza, get a free cheeseburger if you get this jab. You know, it was like, it was laughable by the end of like how much it was like, oh, now you need a booster because, and now you need, people are still getting boosters. Like still, they're still getting boosters in 6 years later, like on their 10th booster and thinking that they're serving humanity. It's like, if you needed the boosters, what about the rest of us who didn't do anything?
Right.
What is that? And so you look at like the contrast between what's actually happening, what the media is portraying, like everyone's dying. And if you don't do this, you're going to die. And then you think about like what history, how history is manufactured. History is completely manufactured. Like for instance, this like Christopher Columbus story, this like this thing is so upside down about like how that whole thing happened. And that was like years of our childhood was like, oh, the white people came here and like there were savages and you know, they had Thanksgiving and it was a jolly old time and now they live happily on their reservations on a few acres and we took over their land. Like it's completely and it gets even deeper than what like there's like, okay, well, maybe it didn't happen like that. Maybe they killed everyone. Maybe it was like a thriving. So there's two books. One's called 1491 and one called 1493. Columbus came here apparently came here 1492, right? So 1491 is a book about how America was before the Europeans came here. And there were many Europeans that tried coming here for hundreds of years and they could not conquer the natives that were here because they were superior. This is a story that doesn't get told. So like Iceland, like the warriors were coming here. Iceland people were coming here trying to take over and they couldn't because arrows were so efficient, especially like compared to guns in the 14, 15, 1600. Guns sucked back then. A person wearing arrows on their front, this from back here, that's not how, that's also not true. It was like from the front, you can just slang like 8 arrows for the time that one gun could be loaded and way more accurate than guns. So they were trying to get conquered for a long time and they couldn't. It was just because every time they would come back 50 years later, then 100 years later, then 50 years later. Diseases eventually wiped out everyone. Then by the time 1492 happened, it was like they were able to get conquered because they were like at 5% of the population that it was once upon a time. But it gets even deeper than that. It's like, well, where like when you start looking into Tartaria and the mud flood and like is Africa and this like in Egypt like is that like connected to North America? And then there's like extraterrestrials and seeding the planet and like what are these god figures that we have in all these cultures like Viracocha and
Yeah.
Quetzalcoatl and how are they all connected into this? And is this a matrix? Like, is this reality even real? And it's like, well, how do all these competing philosophies of our history fit together? And that's the interesting thing for me, because I don't necessarily think it's one thing, because it can't be one thing. Like the matrix theory seems correct. The, you know, the alien theory seems correct. The Even the media theory seems correct at a level. And can they all be layered on top of each other like dimensions? And then we sort of like swim in and out of the different reality dimensions. And how is that even how can that be true? And then you look into the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect absolutely proves that we're in a different reality than we were 20 years ago. You know, like, and I can go on that tangent about how Darth Vader says, you know, Luke, I am your father 20 years ago, but now in the movie he says, no, I am your father, and Field of Dreams, and like all of this wild Mandela effects that are getting even more wild. Like people are starting to recognize that they were like very successful in another reality. There's this guy right now, you guys should look him up. He designed a Doritos commercial, and it was a contest for a Super Bowl commercial that they put out, and he submitted, and he actually didn't win in this reality, but he just randomly, like a couple months ago, posted the commercial that he designed, and thousands of people, I want to say millions, but thousands of people have commented about like, no, I remember your commercial being the commercial that was on the Super Bowl. It was about like pigs flying and shooting lasers out of their butts or something like that. And I remember that commercial as well. But the commercial that in this reality ended up winning, like, doesn't look familiar to me at all. And so there's wild Mandela effects proving that this dimension has to be fluid. And so then what does that mean for us? What's the steering wheel? And that's what I've tried to figure out and to help people more on a grounded level. I got a little bit out there in the last few minutes, but all of that's applicable and can be brought down to a grounded, digestible, what does this mean for me now? And how can we use it?
Yeah, no, I love that. I could listen to you talk about this for the rest of the day, Raw, like straight up. Um, do you think that the Earth that we live in this planet, do you think there's a lot more to it than what we're told? And then what are your thoughts on space?
So it sounds like you're asking, is the world flat and that there more beyond the ice wall? Uh, I feel that there's a good possibility that that is likely. But like I said, reality to me doesn't seem like this solid state thing that we get taught that it is. And even scientifically and through quantum physics and just regular conventional physics, we can tell that everything's energy. And so even what we think of as solid, like this table that this microphone is standing on, isn't solid. It's just energy. And so on a day-to-day level, we're sort of trapped in this linear time, even though we know scientifically that time isn't linear. There's energy that we can see through time. What I mean by that is we can see fields of energy created by stars, morphic fields. I'm going way off on a tangent, so I'm going to just backpedal off that. I'm just going to backpedal back to what I was saying, that energy, like everything's energy, right? And so when we ask the question, like, is the Earth, like, what shape is the Earth? Is the Earth 7 continents? Is there stuff beyond Antarctica? Is the Earth hollow? I think that there's evidence to suggest that a lot of what we hear can be true. Now, is that true? I really feel that it comes down to what we're resonating in, and we can step out into different realities. And so in the reality that we're in right now, is the world round? I don't really know. It doesn't really, that perspective doesn't really matter from where we're sitting now. Like, we don't have that perspective now. Now, is the usable things about, like, if the world is flat versus round, like, what's the notion that we can make from that? Well, the notion that we can make is that the people that are in control of us are lying to us if it's flat, and I think that's usable. So when we look at, like, is the world a matrix? Well, what's usable from that? If this world was a matrix, then that means that I can control my destiny. And so if we take that usable, tangible gnosis from this being a matrix and not evolutionary, gravitationally run universe, and we just think, okay, this is a digital matrix, I'm God, and we apply that to our life, and we find out that, yes, I am God. Now, does that mean the world is a matrix? Not necessarily, but it means that the experiment that I ran as if it was a matrix worked. Now, it doesn't mean that it's a matrix, but it means that we can utilize an aspect of if it were. And so I take that, and it's kind of, I'm getting out here, I'm going on a limb on a lot of this as well. But like, world flat, world circle, the truth doesn't matter as much as the usable application of if it was or not. And from that perspective, I can operate from a flat Earth, a round Earth, a matrix Earth, a gravitational model of the universe, an electric model of the universe. I can operate from all of these different perspectives and utilize my agency and my perspective to make decisions and run experiments. And I really haven't found a limit, right? Like, it literally, I feel like if I could prove to myself that I could fly, right? And we can fly. There's things called airplanes, right? So there's a certain point where humans didn't think we could fly, and now we're flying, right? And I still feel that I could fly. And I have been inside the earth, by the way. And I have, like, not physically, but after a whole week of meditation, no psychedelics, a week long of meditation in Mount Shasta, like, I astral projected into the earth and was speaking to taller, white-haired, blonde beings. So there's weirdness happening. I don't have the answers to everything. What I would encourage people to do is ask the question, if there's more beyond the ice wall, what does that mean? And then do an experiment, because it doesn't matter. Like, we're addicted to knowing the truth, and that's just programming. We're addicted to knowing the right answer. Like, is it A, B, C, or D, or E? And we're trying to find out what the right answer is, because that's what we're programmed to do. We have to step out of that school program. That the truth doesn't matter. The truth is objective. The truth is, like, changing in every single moment. And if we can start organizing ourselves to that, then we can ride on that flow of, like, it doesn't matter what it is what it is right now. And it is what the choice that I'm making right now. And we will find that reality will shape itself around us as opposed to the other way around, which is what everyone's trying to do when they get into an argument, is they're trying to shape reality, or they're trying to fit themselves and their psyche into reality as it is, as opposed to letting it shape around who you are.
Two more questions on this topic, Raw. When you went into consciously, when you went into this, inside the earth, and you saw those figures, what insight did you gain from that experience? Because that's not just a
Yeah.
surface level experience.
So that's a really good question. So the main thing that I took from that, and I see this, and this has happened, it's not like I wanted it to happen, I wasn't intending it to happen, There's this group of people that travel around the earth activating sacred sites. And it was right when I closed my gyms. I owned gyms for 10 years. And it just lined up with me being available. I was asked to come. And basically we spent 5 or 6 days clearing our mind of distractions and meditating twice a day and staring or getting underneath this thing called Pandora's Star, which is this light machine that activates your pineal gland. And we would do these exercises every day where we would intend on certain points on earth and then certain points in space, and we would spin. We would basically create a merkaba, and we're spinning these gigantic pyramids on earth connecting into space, and we were spinning them. And it was like a lot of mental gymnastics. And on like day 7 or 8, we hiked up to Mount Shasta, and there was someone with us who a bird came and told us where the portal was to get into Telos, which is the city under there. And I carried the tent up, and then we went, and then we all put our heads together in a circle, and we were supposed to do more of this, like meditating, connecting these points. And I instantly just like started seeing the earth open up, and like it was like ice crystal was coming out of the earth. Beings were coming in and out of the earth, and a little hole opened next to it. I jumped into the hole and was sliding down. And this is what I got out of it. There was like booby traps, like spikes would come up, and it was almost like a challenge that if I were to feel that those spikes were real and could harm me, that I would get harmed by them. But as long as I was just open hearted and trusting, I would slide through it.
Mm.
And that was the most profound thing for me, was that the dangers in life, if we focus on them and we make them real, then they will be real. And if we trust in our own capacity and our own momentum of the path that we're on, then we will continue going basically to the Graceland, to our own version of heaven. And what I actually spoke and was communicating with the two beings, I have no recollection of. There wasn't like, my consciousness wasn't there for that. It was almost like I was viewing that from afar. But the journey down, I was very aware. And it really taught me a lot about just like knowing that's imminent danger coming my way and being able to choose to hold on to grace and trust, and how we have that capacity for everything. And the media and our brainwashed friends and our parents, they're the spikes that are trying to keep you safe. Like, no, don't go down your pathway. Stay here with us. And to be able to just continue to step forward in the direction of our desires and listen to our heart is ultimately the challenge that's in front of us all. And we're the greatest expression of self, and we're the greatest value to the whole if we continue moving forward and utilizing things like desire and satisfaction and pleasure as the guidance of the direction that we go. And a lot of times it's paired with things like fear and getting over anger, getting over shame. It's like all bundled into one. And we get to move into that. And that's what life's purpose is.
Wow. Man, that's beautifully said. What an incredible experience too. That I know what you said doesn't even justify what it is that you experienced that day up there on that mountain. Last question on, this topic, and then we'll wrap things up here. You mentioned heaven. I'm curious, what your thoughts are whenever we do die, and on heaven and or hell, if that is what somebody believes in. Um, yeah, what's your thoughts on all of that?
I don't have the answer, right? So I haven't concluded what that is. And so this is all just sort of a open assessment of what I feel about it now in a few minutes. I look at reality as dimensional. And right now we're experiencing a version of reality where we're in linear time, where there's a past, present, and future, which is an illusion. And we're also within a separate individual entity within this construct around us, which also is an illusion. And when I mean illusion, I mean like we're focused in on this, but there's also we can zoom out and we can zoom in. Now, meditation is an example of zooming in. We can zoom in to our emotions and feel what's going on inside of us. We can also feel our liver. We can feel our little toe. We can feel our spine. We can feel how the energy is moving through us. We can feel our thoughts. If we zoom out, can we feel other people? Can we feel the earth? Can we feel the collective consciousness of humanity? And I feel that when we die, we shed this physical existence, and physicality is just a dimension. And if you imagine a cell within our body, that cell is also in a life experience. It has to eat, it has to excrete, it has to eventually duplicate itself. It has desires that it goes towards. It runs away from, I don't know if pain is the right description, but it runs away from things. And it has a motivation to live and a purpose. Now, that cell, or like a leaf on a tree, is an individual within a grander organism, right? So the leaf on a tree and that individual cell, the grander organism of the leaf is the tree. The grander organism of a cell within us is us, right? So when that cell dies, when that leaf dies, it's now still sort of like in union with the grander organized self. And I feel that when we die, we go back into this union of the grander organized self. Now, some people call that God, could be called Earth, Gaia, could be called the universe. And there's many other names for that. To me, I feel that the purpose of us as an individual life is to gain perspective of what it's like to be Nate, or what it's like to be Ra, within our own social, economic scenarios and our experiences and our perspectives that we gained on this journey through. And I feel like a cell in our body, we are a self of this grander organism whose purpose is to gain awareness of all of our perspectives. And so the purpose of my life here as Ra is to live as Ra, and yours is to live as Nate, and everyone else is to live as their own. And everyone is equally important to the grander organism. And when we die, we're going to, again, this is a loose sort of like, there's many other scenarios, but since I'm on this thread and I have other perspectives as well, but on this thread that I'm on right now, we step up into that higher intelligence where we are no longer bound by physical space. So we don't have this spacesuit. We're non-physical, we're disembodied, we're enlightened, but we have the consciousness that's connected to me as Ra and you as Nate from this grander, disembodied, enlightened state. And also there's no linear time. And so this non-physical entity is living through us all now. And also everyone in the past and everyone in the future, it's happening now for this grander entity. And I feel like we're already there, and we're just expressing a version of that grander entity as this physical space capsule that we are right now, bound into linear time so that we can have the life experience so that it can gain the knowledge of what life is in this experiment called Earth. And that's kind of like, you can kind of see the correlation to like, well, is that grand organism God, and is that heaven? And the answer to that is yes, it is. It is what the religions say. And I'm just explaining it in my way, but it's also exactly as the base religions explain it as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting take. So let's say you killed 5 people. Are you still gonna go to that same dimension and as well as like everybody else, or would they go to a different dimension?
So that's a good question. Let me just make sure my dog.
Yeah, you're good. Solar.
He used to not know how to open the door, but because the door I need to get the wires through is cracked, now he's like being savvy and just opening the door and walking through all my wires and ruining everything. So that's a really good question. And I feel that this concept of hell is also an illusion used to control. And I think that there's truth to it, but the way that it's portrayed and taught is like a very human construct, right? Like, you're going to go to this bad place and you're never going to be able to leave because you did bad things. And, the person that kills 5 people allowed everyone around them to experience somebody that they know dying. And that experience evolves the grander organism, just like the lion that kills 100 bunnies, or gazelles, or the alligator that eats a zebra. Like, that all is part of nature. Now, does that just give everyone a permission slip to go kill? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that that experience exists here. And one time I decided to channel. So I just closed my eyes in front of a computer and just put my hands on the keyboard and I just typed. And the first thing that came to me was light. It was like this explanation of light. And light is the might of love. That's where that love is the L, and then might is, and it was like this. I just typed it out. I was just typing, just letting my fingers move. And it was this explanation about what light was. The second thing that was told to me was soul. And what a soul is soft oil. And I got shown this diagram of the universe and all of us as individuals. And we're these little soft, oily packets. So this grander organism that I'm describing in this vision was like this machine that you can imagine gears all sort of working together, but they weren't really gears. They were like oil packets that were sort of like moving together. And the goal was to get as soft as possible. So all these oily packets were attempting to get so soft that they become one. But within this construct, there were hard packets, like very hard. And these are the people that are killing people, right? These harder packets were, we can call them less evolved, even though that's not really accurate language. But we can say like acting for themselves. They were not acting within the cohesiveness as the whole, and they were going in the opposite direction, getting hardened and more individualized. What that causes is a response from the packets around them, because the harder one gets, the softer the ones around them need to get, and then eventually that would balance out. It would be the evolution of the whole thing, that there would be pain and suffering and killing and raping happening, but that causes the rest of the organism to learn and to evolve and to ascend. And as a whole, there's a service that these individuals are actually serving. It's a weird way to look at it. Like, someone can rape and pillage and be serving the whole, but that's just the digestion that I got from viewing this. And that's sort of my answer to why things like war and raping and killing exist, because it allows us as a grander organism to evolve and know ourselves on that level.
That's
And
an
so
interest.
is there a hell? Uh, that's a whole other tangent I can go on, but I think that sorry to cut you off, the harder thing is going to experience like what we call karma, right? So there, hell isn't necessarily a uh how I would look at it, how it's kind of described, this like doom dark place that we go. You end up creating that cycle that maybe we go through with multiple lifetimes, where what we put out, we then get to re experience. If you actually go look at the original meaning of the word hell, what it is like, because English isn't what the Bible was originally written as, right? But like the original word was the word that they used for where they would burn garbage. And so, like on the outskirts of city, they would burn the garbage. And that word is actually the original meaning for hell. And when you actually look at that, it's a place, a way that dirtiness and garbage gets basically transmutated back into the whole. And so if you're somebody who struggling to learn the lesson of collaboration, then you must go through the fire and be transmuted back into the whole somehow. And I'm not sure that means that your soul goes into hell forever, or if there's some other process where you learn those lessons based on the decisions of your past, which we know past is possibly an illusion.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Man, I think it's a question that we all think about, like what happens after we die? What happens in the afterlife? Where do we go? Religions believe different things. If you're spiritual, you believe other things. If you're atheist, you believe something else. And I think it's something that I think if you rely too heavily on it, it can do more damage to you being in this field, especially this consciousness that we have here on earth versus what is to come. I know, Ra, when I started to go down the rabbit hole of a lot of the 9/11 events, all the conspiracy theories, right, that they would say, like, man, you can go deep. Like, you can go so deep, and then nothing else really matters in life
Never ends.
besides, yeah, and then it impacts maybe your relationship or friendships because that's all you're talking about, and you're like, "Guys, this isn't even real. Like, this didn't even happen." And then they're like, they don't get it, and there's just no relatability. So whenever, I have someone like yourself on the podcast, man, I could ask you question after question, literally for hours on end, and it's insane just how much mystery I feel that there is out there, and life is about questions, truly, but yeah, we might have to do a part 2 or something.
I don't think that we need the answers though, right? It's like the questions can exist and the answers can exist, and they don't necessarily need to get paired. I feel like when an answer meets a question, it explodes. And now it's kind of like that cycle is closed and there's no more learning. And so we don't always need an answer to a question. The questions can exist and be just so beautiful and valuable to us as a question.
Yeah, absolutely. Last thing here, Raw. Let's go a little fast comparison game. So I'm going to ask you one versus the other. You're going to pick which one you would choose. Okay. So first one is control or surrender.
Surrender. Control's an illusion. I mean, so surrendering is the ultimate sort of control, but it's yeah, control is such a paradox. You're never in control if you're grasping.
Mm, okay. Truth or comfort?
See that these have two different meanings. I'll choose truth. I'll choose truth. But like I just said, like they're real like that's not a that's a paradox on its own. Um, but comfort is probably a dangerous place to be. It's where you're just going to be not growing and not progressing and not looking in the mirror. And so I think that comfort's more dangerous than always seeking for truth, even though truth has its downfalls, because then you just become a slave to truth.
Identity or freedom?
Identity, being aware of yourself is ultimately what's going to lead you to your feeling of freedom. And if you're just seeking freedom, then you can lose yourself really easily. But if you hold on to your identity, then you have the thing that's most important, which is yourself. And so seeking freedom, you could lose yourself. And that's the wrong direction.
Yeah, I can see that. Ego or awareness?
Awareness, awareness will allow you to um, transcend your ego and also be aware of your ego and be aware of the positive and the negative. And awareness is going to allow you to have multiple perspectives, where their ego is going to be mostly about your individual nature and what's going to serve you. And awareness just is, it's so much more colorful. And so awareness, these are all very similar, but I like it. It's challenging to come up with.
Yeah, it's not like one versus the other. Oh, obviously it's going to be
Yeah,
this one. It makes you it makes you kind of think a little bit, throws you off.
right.
Um, routine or presence?
Presence.
Okay.
There's definitely a gift to habit and routine. Presence is like really everything's changing, and if we can stay present, then we're in the moment, and that's what we're here to be in.
Logic or intuition?
Intuition, it's the same thing as presence. Logic is taught. Logic is what we get taught is important in school. Intuition is way underplayed. Intuition is that part of us that it's really like God speaking to us. It's the higher mind speaking to us, and that's that's much more softer and subtler, but also can lead you to your personal evolution much greater than logic will.
Stability or growth?
Growth, stability is limiting. Stability is a preference. It's comfort. Growth is when you're in the zone of uncomfortableness and grow, and obviously you're in growth, it's if we're talking about growth, but you're in a point of pushing into your fears and handling your limits and really looking at yourself in new ways and evolving. Stability is what you do when you die. You quit evolving, you quit growing, and you're just stable.
Mm, I like that. Reaction or response?
Response. Reaction is an automated feature that serves a purpose. It's definitely a shortcut. A response is, response comes from the word responsibility. And so, for our ability to respond in a conscious, collected, intentional way is usually going to be better for the whole.
Okay. Thinking or observing?
Observing. Observing comes without judgment, comes without comparison, and comes before all of that. And so, being within the observation first, you can still think about it after, but you can't skip over observing. Observing and thinking are both important, but the observation and your ability to observe from multiple perspectives is going to empower you to think at a grander level. They're so related.
I might have done that on purpose. um, conspiracy or pattern?
Well, I think pattern recognition, I'd choose pattern. To
Okay.
conspire means to cooperate with others in a like a sort of like a secret way. And so that's not cool. Pattern recognition allows pattern, and I'm taking it as pattern recognition allows you to recognize the conspiracy, allows you to recognize how others are conspiring potentially against you. And so being able to understand and recognize patterns throughout history, throughout the current moment is why I choose pattern.
Okay. Conditioned or conscious?
Condition means learning. Um, Consciousness is conscious. Conditioning is important. You need to learn. Uh, Consciousness is where we put our focus. It's where we put what we call I or what we call me. That's where our consciousness is. And so learning is just the patterns that we logically adopt. So consciousness is really who we are and what we choose to be. So consciousness. I don't even remember. Was it learning or consciousness? That's what it was, right?
Conditioned.
Condition. Oh yeah. Conditioned or conscious. Same thing.
Yeah. Okay, last three. So we got gym floor or meditation room.
Oh man. It's one or the other, huh?
Yep.
Uh
Your roots are saying one thing, your heart's saying the other.
this one might be the hardest one of them all. See, like a meditation room, you don't have physical adaptation. You don't really know yourself physically. You kind of go into the non-physical. The gym is more physical. Um, I will go with gym floor. Man, I'm surprised that I came up with that because it's through knowing yourself physically that you're eventually going to open yourself up to uh, knowing yourself at a deeper level and potentially discovering meditation. A lot of us um, are so disconnected physically that we're unable to comprehend what's going on non-physically, and I think the physical comes first.
That's a good answer. Yeah, I'm surprised. I figured you would have said meditation, but what you just said makes sense. Um, last two. So asleep or awake?
Awake. it's the same thing with consciousness, right? So like you're awake, you're conscious. And eventually, if you learn to be awake when you're awake, you can be awake when you're sleeping. Sleeping implies that you're resting, and you're potentially not observing. But when you're able to be conscious and awake, you can actually carry that into sleep, which is another wild tangent. Because when we awake in our life, we can awaken in our sleep as well.
Absolutely. Last one. Haircut or no haircut?
You know,
And before you get into a Raw has had the most beautiful, longest of hair for over 10 years. He just cut it
yesterday.
yesterday and is full blown bald right now. So this is a huge energetic shift for him.
Yeah. You know, I'm going to say no haircut because we all get haircuts, and to know what your true design is by not cutting your hair, not even shaving, is something that I feel every human should feel once in their life. To go through the process of knowing how you're designed, like what you look like. There was a time where I didn't shave my face for 5 years or pluck my eyebrows for 5 years. It was like 5 or 6 years. I didn't cut my hair. I eventually shaved after 6 years, and I just cut my hair at like 10 years. I just shaved it all off. But I remember back like when nothing was cut, like my face, and every time I would look in the mirror, I would just feel this level of authenticity that is impossible to sense about yourself if you're grooming yourself. And so I got to go no haircut on that, because I really encourage and invite people to just see how you're designed once in your life. It doesn't need to be forever. But it is a sight to see when you can see yourself as you were designed.
Mm. Are you glad that you cut your hair? Are you having any regrets or no?
Well, I mean, I spent years talking about the importance of hair and how
Yeah.
it's energetic. And, I went into this thinking that all of that was real, but it's okay. I'll just cut my hair. Out of it was like a practice of detachment. And also, I was feeling like I should cut my hair over the last 2 years. And I finally listened to it. It's interesting. Like, I went from like loving my hair and having nightmares of people cutting my hair, and the last couple years kind of feeling disassociated with it, and almost like I had negative connotation to it for some reason. I don't know why yet. I haven't figured that out. And so I shaved it yesterday, and it's actually, I feel traumatized in a way. Like, I feel like this pain, but it's not necessarily pain. It's like a mixture between coldness, which I think is really just a lack of that energy.
Yeah.
It's not like my crown chakra is like being drained and depleted, but it's like cold pain, deep, not my skin necessarily, and it's like coldness like you can't imagine. Like, because I take cold showers, it's not like cold, it's like dying of cold. It is kind of how it feels up here, and it hurts. And I feel like energetically traumatized. I couldn't sleep last night. I've been up since, I couldn't sleep all night. Now, am I glad I cut it? Yes. That decision was made, and I'm standing by it. But it's definitely surprising. I'm even shocked at the level of difference that this is making in my body. And I'm sure I'll adapt, but it's just interesting. I wasn't expecting it. And so it's an interesting experience.
Now, are you gonna grow it out again? Are you gonna maintain it a certain way? Any thoughts on that? Like,
Yeah, I don't have much thoughts, but I think I'll be shaving it for a little bit.
yeah.
And assuming this sort of identity and then maybe grow it out a little bit. I think I look best growing it out a little bit, but I don't know. I got to the point where I didn't really think much beyond buzzing it off. That's where I'm at right now, and I don't know what the future holds.
Yeah, it's crazy. It definitely gives you a different identity, like, whenever you had it versus not. Looks like you about to be a prison warden ready to beat somebody up over there. But oh
Yeah,
my gosh. No, I love it though, either way. I mean, you did it for a reason, and I'm sure you're gonna have so many incredible, awakenings or things that happen during this time. I mean, 10 years, that's a long time. That's a full-blown decade since you've cut it. So,
right.
that's, yeah, that's incredible. Real quick, Raw, where can people find you on social media? Do you have any resources or anything?
Yeah, I think I'll give you like a free course on manifestation,
Okay.
like a code you could put, and then raw underscore of underscore earth on Instagram. So it's RA underscore of underscore earth on Instagram, and then rawoferarth.com. You can find everything. I've got a membership site and community as well where I do practices, live practices every week, plus recordings and some courses, and then also one on ones as well.
Cool. No, that'd be great for the listeners and the viewers. Ra's gonna hook you all up, so that's yeah, appreciate that, brother. Real quick, just before we wrap up, Ra, I've always appreciated and had the utmost respect for you as a man. Whenever we first met back there in Venice, doing the ice baths and some plant medicine and some fire circles and breath work. And I've truly always recognized something different about you. I'm a bit of an empath and can really see someone for who they are and just auras, I guess you can say. And I know you understand exactly what I'm saying. And I could always see you were different from everybody else. And seeing that the man you are at, you said 43 years old, that is incredible. The man that you become. I know you've been through a lot in life, more than what people I think can even fathom or imagine with what you've been through. And the life that you have created for yourself, and most importantly, the woman that you've landed and the wife that you have and that you bared a daughter to is truly amazing. And you live a life that many dream to live. And I think you know that, but I just wanted to remind you of that. So, brother, I respect you and I have the highest admiration for yourself. So I'm giving you your flowers to say the least. And I appreciate you just dropping all the value, the insight, and everything that you have on this little podcast that we got here. So thank you, bro. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the words, Nate. I sense the same thing within you too. You got this power about you. I can hear it in your voice. And um, yeah, man, this fatherhood journey that we're both on is going to be glorious. And that's really what we're creating. And we get to witness that every single day. And it's been an honor to be here. And thanks for having me on.
Always. I got you. You know that.
Yeah.